This is the part where I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, hello, and thank you very much for coming and happy Friday. But I got this little board over here and it's really cool. But, I've only had it for a year now. So you'd think I'd figure it out, but I haven't. So thank you very much for coming on. And hello, everybody. Scott's here. Hello, Scott. Very, very nice to see you. Paul was here earlier. Now, I think he's working, so he can't, be here the whole time. But thank you very much for popping on early, Scott. Jordy's here. Hello, Jordy. Thanks very much for coming in. Today, I think is going to be a lot of fun because what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how I made these miniature scale, same thing, these miniature shingles for roofing my D&D diorama. I should have probably had this down here, but it's been pretty fun. And I think that the thing with this was I'd seen a lot of people do it with popsicle sticks and styrene and cardboard, and they bought shingles or laser cut or I don't know, lots of different stuff. And of course, I saw other people doing it, with real wood, like I've done. But I hadn't seen anybody make them from scratch and stuff like that. So I wanted to do that. And thankfully, I had some. Now, here's something that's kind of dumb. All week, I've been saying it's 1/32. The kind of veneer that I'm using, it's 1/16. So I hope nobody was kind of going off on that and saying, maybe I'm going to make some. And then went out and tried to find some veneer because you can find 1/32 easily. 1/16 is what this is. And I think it's a great size for it. So I apologize for that. I should have checked my numbers first. But it's coming along well. The fun part is now these transitions, and there's a bunch of them, and we're going to talk about that today because I could have done a heck of a lot better in my preparation for putting these on here than I did. So we're going to talk about that, and hopefully you'll learn from my mistake. It's not unrecoverable. It makes it a little bit harder just because of the way I did it. So we're going to look at that, and I got other pictures to share and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to look at it live. I've also got a video that I'll show you about the process of doing it. And we're going to do that pretty quick. So I'm going to say hi to some folks, and then we're going to go right to that video. Jordy, Northwest Scale Modelers, hello. It's Neil, I believe. Yes, it is Neil. Hello, Neil. Thanks very much for coming on. That's really, really cool. I hope you're doing well. Therapy Kit, hello from France. Thank you very much for coming in. That's wonderful. John is here. Hello, John. Hey, John, I don't know if you're back yet or if you're still where that tiki is from, but it's great to see you. Thanks very much. Scott is, and hello. I'll have to send the palette back now. See, you went in big. You went for all that 1/32, and it's just going to be too thin. Now, if you're making a smaller scale, Scott, you could use those. So sorry about that, everybody. So yeah, it's 1/16 and it looks good. So why don't we take a look at this little video that I put together? It's just not, very nutty, but it just shows the whole process of getting them ready. And then we'll go to the live and the bench and we'll look at it. Okay. So let's take a look at this. So these are mahogany veneer. And so I've just got, I think 1, 2, 3, I've got 5 pieces here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to taper these so I can make some shingles. So about 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just using this as a stop to line them all up, against it here and against the edge. Then, scoot it back a little bit. Then I'm going to use this to hold them down. It's easy to clamp them that way. Now that it's clamped, I'm going to come in here with a hand plane, and you can do this with like a sander, a power sander, if that's all you have, or even a file. But this works really, really super well. So all I'm going to do is I'm trying to get the top corners of all 5 of these pieces. I'm not bearing down real hard. I'm just kind of I get it here, balance it, and then I'm just easily going like that. See, I'm at a little bit of a angle here, a skew, because it's easier than doing it like that. It cuts, you know, at an angle a lot better. So again, I get there, I get on the edge, and then I just kind of go back and forth. At first, you won't get a lot. That's okay. As you start getting more of an angle, you will be cutting more. So just give it a little bit of time. You're just getting there. At the end, you're going to be cutting, like this whole thing will be one little tapered piece. So I just keep going back and forth. And see, now it's taken quite a bit off. And I'm just trying to keep it even. There you go. So that gives us, a splinter, but it also gives us a real nice taper on these. So take this off here, and now if you look here, I can line them up, and it's kind of hard to see, but now they're all tapered, and now we can take them over here. So I get them all there up against this stop. It's only going to cut into that a little bit, but I put that on top to hold it down, make sure it's secure. Now I got to do a crud load of those, but that will be nice to shingle that roof. Okay, so that was, how am I going to do, there we go. Sorry about that. I was trying to also talk to John, and you know, because he's not locally, but he's able to watch our show. So that was it. So the nice thing about this is we're making real shingles. Now these, and I'm going to show you how to do this live, because I think there's a couple of things to talk about when you want to make these. There's a point in which it has to coordinate with how you set up the lath or the roof material. And what I mean by that is this. When I first did this, I put these on here, right, at what I believe should be, it looked right. I didn't measure. I just said, well, that looks right. And I stuck them on there. I do a lot of that, by the way. And in doing so, you know, these courses, you know, of shingles actually do follow these. They don't have to, but they should, because in real life, what you're doing is you're nailing into these, and or hooking if it's like a tile shingle. And I didn't do that. So there's a couple of things that I'm dealing with now. Number one, when I'm cutting these, I completely lucked out by doing a 3/4 inch taper. It just worked. It could have been an inch taper. I could have had the offset of those, you know, individual pieces of 1/16 inch veneer. I could have had them farther away. I could have had them a 1/2 inch. Thankfully, what I did worked perfectly. And then I cut them to that's about 1 inch and I think 1/8. Yes, exactly that. It's 1 inch and 1/8. So that was luck. If you're doing this, what I would say is mark out when you're putting these on your framing. Build your framing just like I did, you know, in earlier videos and stuff like that. Then when it comes to the lath, just mark them out. And what I've done here is they're about a 1/2 inch reveal or 1/2 inch gap, you know, so the top of this one to the top of this one's like a half, maybe 5/16. I would go maybe half. So ½ inch from the top of this one. I'm sorry, I try to get a little closer from the top of this one to the top of this one, all the way down. You know, it should be a ½ inch measurement between them. By having it, you know, nice and marked out like that, I think you're going to have a heck of a lot better time on establishing a very clean course of these shingles. Now, I did want something a little rough, and that's because this is meant to be in medieval days. It's not supposed to be up to date. It's not here. I just said it too, a little Freudian slip. It's not here. It's an imagined world. It's not Europe. It's not England. It's not France. This is an imagined world. It's the world of Midkemia from the author Raymond E. Feist. So I've given myself a lot of levity here. Not levity. What I don't even know what the term is, but scope to make everything happen. I don't have to follow stringent guidelines. But I also want it recognizable. You know, if I'm making something that looks kind of like that, you have to kind of follow suit throughout. And I didn't want to do that. I want it very recognizable. I want it to harken back to like a D&D, to like a Middle European, a medieval European era, so that things that you see in the setting immediately come to mind. They're very familiar, but they're done with my little twist on it, you know? And so that's kind of what I'm saying. But at the same time, if I miss something, it might be because, number one, there's so many different ways of building a Tudor style. What I learned this week, which is it's called a half timber style. A friend online, Winston, been doing really great. You know, give me a lot of comments, stuff like that. I believe he's from the UK and or England. And he kind of, you know, educated me a little bit more about some of the beams, some of the effects, you know, some of the years where some of these different iterations of this style of manufacture of a building, you know, went through. You know, it's over 1,000 years. Over 1,000 years, you're going to have a lot of variation. And because these buildings were used, and they're still used today, they're broken down, they're repaired, they've got new materials that are better material. You know, there's all kinds of things that can go into this building. I tried not to get too caught up in that. I mean, I like the details, certainly, but again, what I'm trying to get at is a building that's, number one, recognizable, that's going to get you into kind of like a time frame that I can work with and I can find some reference pictures on, you know, and build it to the best of my ability so that it's not something that's totally out of whack because it's in some foreign, well, it's actually on a different planet, you know, where Magician, the novel that I'm following, takes place. So anyway, that whole thing is all meant to say, I'm really trying to make it, build it well. I'm trying to make it recognizable, but I'm not stringently holding to how things were built. Is that okay? I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing. I just didn't want to make it sound like I'm trying to do this archaeologically based, you know, this is how this is. I don't want to give a false impression of that. Now, I've got some folks saying stuff, and I want to get it on here. So, oh, sorry, that was me. So Jordy says the precision of the mark. Well, thank you very much. Make one eyeball. I think what Jordy's saying is just, you know, making sure by eye you can still do that. Now, and I think that's a really good point. My dad, years ago, he worked in the photography business and like laying up newspapers, worked for the newspaper. So you'd like lay up the newspapers and all that kind of stuff. And in doing that, you use rulers and stuff so that the type in laying up the type for the big printers for newspapers is all level and it's all, you know, it's not cattywampus and all that kind of stuff. And when I was a little kid, my dad said, look, your eye is just so accurate. A lot of times by eye, you can do an awfully good job without using a measurement. So what Jordy's saying is very correct. You know, you can use your eyes to make that. And I think with practice, being a woodworker and doing this for so many years, I think I have had the practice so I can kind of just figure it out. I kind of know. But if you're a little bit new to it and you really want that staunch, man, those are so accurate, because maybe you're not going to have, you know, kind of a rough, you know, pattern like this, because that's what I was hoping for and was going for. If you don't want that, if you want it very well laid out, that's where, you know, measuring would be good. But yeah, thanks very much, Jordy. I think a lot of it has to do with doing it a very leeway. Thank you very much. Gosh, thanks, Neil. You know, the older I get, the better I am at forgetting stuff, especially words. So anyway, thank you very much. Artistic license. Yeah. And that's another one, Scott. I think building from the eye has taught me that how it looks is typically what you should build for. Okay. I love movies. I've talked about that an awful lot on the channel and during the live streams. And in movies, I typically watch the special features, you know, quite a bit. And in the special features, they talk about how they do background and how they design sets and how they present something. Well, one of the things that I always thought was fascinating was matte painting. And matte painting behind the scene, like in Star Wars, you know, where Obi-Wan goes to turn off the shield and, you know, so they can take off. And then, of course, he meets Darth and that whole battle ensues. But when he's on that big power, you know, turning off the power to the shields, all behind him, below, above and below him, that's all matte painting. And it looks so precise because, number one, your focus is on Obi-Wan and what he's doing. So everything in the background is just in the background. And because your brain is so good at filling in gaps and things of that nature, it becomes more realistic, even though if you get up on that matte painting, it's not. It's smudges. It's very loose painting. It's beautifully done and everything is correct, but your eye fills in the gaps. I think the same thing happens when you're working with these kinds of things. I want it to match what my eye thinks. I want it to match what my eye is going to recognize. So sometimes you can build some things that it doesn't look right. You know, even though it's accurate, it just doesn't look right just because of how you see it. So I hope that little tangent isn't, you know, not making any darn sense, but building for the eye, giving the suggestion and letting the brain kind of map it all out so that you understand it, I think is the most effective way to do it. If I build it completely, I don't know. It's just, and we'll talk a little bit more as we go on. But that's just one of the things that I do in building my details, building the things that I add to my dioramas is I kind of concentrate on that matte painting kind of an idea where I give the suggestion and allow the brain to kind of map it out and figure it out and give the data back to you so it looks even more realistic than if I'd have made it realistic. See, now I'm just digging myself a hole. Fancy Potato, hello, I'm happy to make it for my first live stream. Thank you so much. That's really, really nice. I really appreciate that. I get really excited about this stuff, and sorry, it might like throw some people off, but and Northwest Scout Modelers, oh yeah, thanks very much, Neil. That's awesome. I appreciate it. So let's look at some more pictures because I want to talk about this thing about the eye and how I didn't plan maybe properly. And so I've got that over here in some slides, and we're going to look at some tools because the tools that I used in that kind of specialized, not too highly specialized, but I've got some really nice ones, and we're just going to talk about that. So let's do this. Over here, these are the tools that I used this week, and I wanted to make special note that I'm using both the regular size chisel and a miniature chisel for my work in here, and I'll show you how in the live part. Also, there's the large style hand plane and then the small hand plane. And those really do help. So now this is the jig, and we're going to show that in a minute. This is the jig that I used of cutting the individual from the prepared pieces that we made on the table saw in the video. So we're going to look a little bit more at that. And then here's one of those pieces. Here you can clearly see the taper. See that taper? That's the lighter color towards the top. Let me see if I can get in here. Is this help if I... No, that doesn't help. I don't know what I'm doing. So anyway, sorry about that. I was trying to do something and it was not working. That's just closer. So I make a bunch of these guys and then I started in. So let's look at this bottom course and see how rough it is. I think the issue here, if I can get back on here, I think the issue here is two things. And I left this side a little bare so you could kind of see it. I wanted this weird side profile where there's a step. Let's see if it's going to, there we go. It's doing, see this little step? I wanted that to come out and make this kind of a weird flange thing. And then I had planned on having more of a flat area here. And this is going to work fine. But I wanted more of a flat area here so somebody running on the roof could run on the roof. And I realized that with shingles and stuff, it's not going to work that way. I mean, I kind of could have done it, but it would have looked weird. So I think the pictures will show a little bit better what I'm talking about here. So let's swap back over. So right over here, this bottom area, that's the transition from on the right-hand side of this picture. Let's see if the next picture is a little bit better. That right there is the transition from that little, I don't know, 1.5 inch flat area to that first built up area. On the right, you can see it. As I go up there using these straight angles, there's no other way to transition to get that flat unless I made like, here. So on the inside here, this is really hard to explain. I'm sorry. I thought it would be easier and it's not. What I did was, in this instance, I came down. Well, first I did the bottom, just like I did over here. Okay. But then instead of transitioning from this up to this wall, I started straight at the base of this wall and then started going up. So that gave me a better transition, kind of like what I was thinking I was going to do here. But because when I was doing it, I just said, look, it's not going to look right because it's going to give a place where water could be held. And you don't want that. So I thought that's not going to work. You don't want any place where there's water going to be held. Here, it's not so bad because, this whole thing tapers down. So water is going to run. And this will be kind of the middle here, transition from here. This will be kind of curved coming up. So I think that's going to work. But I just wanted you to see the plan that I had here for this. Because of how the individual shingles get in there and stuff, there we go. It just didn't quite work out. So if I wanted that flat area, and again, this is part of the storyline. This is part of, in the book, and I have the book here, how convenient. In the book, Jimmy the Hand is running on the rooftops. That's how he's introduced to the storyline, to all the readers. And in making this diorama, it's important that I hit those little key elements, I think, for the readers of the book, for the people that know the book. I mean, these were highlights in the book that Raymond Feist put in the book. And so if I'm not acknowledging that or having that in, there's really no purpose for it because, I mean, those are the kind of elements I think that somebody that understands the book, the storyline, whatever, is going to see and look for. So I'm really trying to work those things in. Again, I think it's going to work, even though it does this kind of a transition instead of a stopped transition where he would have more of a flat area to run along the edges of it. It makes it a little bit more perilous, but it can still be done. Why, again, that's so apparent, I told you, but the secondary reason is I do want the roof of this diorama playable. It's why I put a flat top on the roof. So there is a little bit at the peak, there is a flat element. This is a playable diorama. It's meant to be played as, you know, with D&D figures. So if I want the roof to be an element, if I want it to be there, you actually have to physically put a figure up there. So that was the other thing that I'm trying to accomplish here. You've got the attic, it's completely open, which I really like the look of the attic. Sorry, I was getting mixed up there. I really like the look of the inside of the attic. I think that's awesome. So that's going to be a nice hiding place or like a meeting place for, you know, ne'er-do-wells, whatever. But yeah, so it's coming along there. But it was a lesson in learning how to do this. And I'm still learning, because these transitions from here to here and here to here, that's going to be wonky as well. This right here, if you're looking at it, it's hard to see right now, but they're not straight. They're at a really funky angle. So like these go from here, go down this way, and then connect with these. I don't know. So I'm going to have to, you know, fix that when I do my my shingles, but son of a gun. So anyway, let's look at a couple more pictures. I hope I'm giving some good content here so that you understand this process if you're going to be able to do it yourself. It's very doable, and I think it's great. I was going to talk about this, so I should stop. This is a hand plane. If you pick up a hand plane, because you just want one, you're into it and stuff like that. This is like it's called a pocket plane or just a hand plane. It's a very small plane. This is a really nice one, and it's already tuned. And what I mean by tuned is I have taken it apart, I've sharpened it, I've made sure that the bottom is flat and 90 to the sides and all that kind of stuff. I don't want you to think you can go to Lowe's, because you can go to just Lowe's, or you can go to Home Depot, or you can go to a hardware store and just pick up a hand plane, and you just can't take it out of the package and go, hey, look at that. You know, Bill was right. No. Can't do that. Unfortunately, they don't come that way. They're close, but what you have to do is tune it. And so if you want to tune it, if you want to understand how to tune it, say so below. And I will do a video. There's plenty of videos out there how to tune one of these, but I could do one and show you how, and show you what I do when I get a new plane, because it is such a wonderful tool. It is, and I use this in another place, and I have a video to show that on the diorama. So you don't have to be like a full-on woodworker dude or person to do this stuff. You know, if you're into woodworking, gosh, get yourself a hand plane. It's much more satisfying, I think, a lot of times than using a power tool or something like that. You know, I still use power tools all the time, but there is a very great feel about using a hand tool. And by the way, this is a beaut. This is a Lee Nielsen, whatever. Really nice hand tools if you're interested in that kind of thing. The other one I used is this little guy. Now, this little guy, this is from Lee Valley. There's a lot of L's in tools, apparently. I just got a bunch of stuff on my keyboard. Sorry. This is a miniature plane. Now, I've talked about these before. All the miniature tools. I have a bunch of miniature tools. And I've bought Mrs. Modelcraft has bought all of these, and I get one each year. There are about 17 or 18 of these little tools, ranging all sorts. But they're actually very functional, and I use them when I work. It's the same function, the same kind of use that I would use the regular size hand plane on. It's just miniature. It's engineered well enough that it actually works. It's not just a toy. It's not just something to look neat. Thing works. And you have to tune it just like the other one. So it's a lot of fun. Okay, so I am gonna go back to pictures. I am go back over here. I got some picked out how many seams between courses of shingles line up. Wouldn't that make the roof leak? Yeah, probably, Neil. But that's part of the storyline too. We have to have some more stuff on there, so we're getting there. But good call, good catch. There was a show where the woodworkers only use hand tools. Yeah, there's lots of people out there that only do it. I loved growing up watching New Yankee Workshop and what's the other one? I can't remember now. You know, I always forget stuff. But I grew up watching shows. That's how I learned woodworking was from watching, TV, woodworking TV in the 90s and loved it. Anyway, my miniature plane doesn't have much weight to it. How is the Lee Valley one? See, that's the thing. A little bit of heft is really nice. The miniature one, this feels substantial. This one is quite heavy, really nicely done. Lee Valley tools and Lie-Nielsen tools make really excellent tools. Some of them, there's an old, and I have one, there's an old small hand plane that you used to be able to get from X-Acto. And it's just basically bent metal and stuff. Works really actually well, but it doesn't have that heft. It's a little bit bigger than this miniature one. It's the same basic design, and it works fine. So you can find one of those. That's probably a good little tool to use for this kind of work. But if you want to upgrade it and you plan on doing more, gosh, either of these, Lee Valley, Leevalley, it's a Canadian company, they're wonderful, or Lie-Nielsen, Lienielson. I'm sorry, Lienielsen is Lie-Nielsen, and man, they're just awesome. So great hand tools. And if you're a person that likes tools, these you would like. That's the thing for me. Sound out of that show was beautiful. Yeah, it was really good. Woodwright Shop. Yep, that's exactly it, John. The Woodwright Shop. Perfect. Thanks much. Hey, Neil is here. Hello, Neil, and hello, everyone. Thanks very much for coming on, Neil. Haven't seen you in a little bit, and that's wonderful. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're still building on your beautiful 1/6 scale World War I trench diorama, because it's fantastic. So thanks very much for being on. That's really, really cool. Okay, so pictures. Let's do this. So I started on that inside course. I'm having to do a lot of trim. And this corner, this big corner of the one that I did on the left, transitioning around that corner, there's another bend. Oh, it's just going to be really fun. Here you can see it's starting to come along. And that's really kind of where I left it. But I think it looks good, and I think it's going to come out well. So here is the side profile. Now, I am doing this, and I want to explain this as well, because I have Winston was talking to me about this week about the ends, because the ends of this, like on the end of a Tudor or a half timber style building, you would see the structure in here. And I fully planned on putting that structure on the ends, but also structure on the inside, because I think some of that would be neat in here, just because you'd have to maneuver. But then I have to think about playability. So whatever, I'm gonna work on that. But on the end of a Tudor house, you would see all that structure. There'd be a lot more structure, and you would see the panels like we have on the regular building right over there. But And I think that would help the look, right? But I'm trying to do it as a cutaway. I'm trying to do this so that it's not the end of the building. It's literally the building continues on. It's meant to be a cutaway. So I'm kind of at that point where, okay, so I have this. It would look fine with structure there, and I put the little panels in, the wattle and daub, and all that kind of stuff, and everything will look fine. But playability, view. So, you know, this is the front. This is what you see. The top is playable, all that. But you really are going to play from back here. And of course, you've got a lot of options here. You've got the side building that, you know, you can go down and stuff like that. You've got this over the bridge, so you can crawl or whatever through there. And then you've got this big area up here. We could have multiple characters, and you could be having like a secret meeting, or you could be spying on below people. All sorts of scenarios are available, and I want that available. But what I'm also used to doing in my dioramas is just trying to squeeze in as much detail as I possibly can. I like that. I just like doing it. It's kind of my, that's the fun part. Just thinking of all the stuff I can put in it. Well, if it's gaming, you actually need to leave room for the DM to come up with their own story. I can't have this fixed scene because you play it once and it's like, it's boring. There needs to be the ability for, you know, there are components in there like boxes or crates or whatever I got up here, you know, and in all the other levels, by the way. So there's got to be stuff in there like I like to do, but I can't really fix anything down. I typically do that. You know, everything's all fixed down and glued in place, stuff like that, but I can't do that. So that also means that I have to take a little bit different idea about how I build it. And that whole thing about structure, putting more structure in here, which I'd like. If it were all glued down, it would be fine to put it in there, but you're going to be reaching in there, moving stuff around. So see, those are little things that I'm trying to think through, and I'm trying to do justice. You know, I don't want to build a lesser diorama than I love to build, because I love building highly detailed dioramas. You know, this thing, when it's done, it's a playable gaming diorama. Bet, done, figured it out. But I also want it to be able to be set up so that when you're not playing in it, it's a rad looking diorama, right? So it's going to be quite a challenge. But, you know, that's why you do it anyway. If it's not a challenge, it ain't no fun. So let's go back and look at some of these pictures and see what else I got to show you. Yeah, so there's that little dog leg. It's not dog leg, but that little crook that comes out. And I saw this in real, you know, schematics. And that's the other reason I did it. I just, you know, here it is. Now, this is the bottom course. This is the bottom course on the right-hand side. I could have a different roof there. It could start going straight. I don't know. I think it would probably look dumb. So I'm going to do it just like the others. And I think it's better. So this is something that is a problem. See those lines that I have drawn on these and the jagged nature? It's something that I have not, I haven't done stuff right to it. Man, I don't know. I'm really, here's the issue. So on this side, I have this very clear line of demarcation, right? It's just like so clean and it feels great. You know, I'm really proud of it. This side is not. I've not done the same thing, and the elements in it, and it's because it's just this weird thing. When I'm building this, I build beyond what the profile will be. So if you kind of look there, here's the end of the profile, and it also has to come up. So it comes up at a little bit of an angle. Boy, this is really hard to show you, but I have to cut this stuff off, and I have to put some structural elements like these, you know, these beams underneath it to support it, like it is over here, like it is on this side. You know, I need to build it up like that. It's at such a funky angle because it comes onto a corner, whereas these are basically flat areas. So yeah, I haven't done that yet. Well, till I do that, I can't flip and go over here and shingle it. So, you know, it's just one of those things. But I did want to stop before I went further. I was going to do some of that last night, but I wanted to show you and talk about it because I've never claimed, and nobody else is, that you know, I don't make mistakes or go back and fix. I really hold the idea that learning to fix mistakes makes you a better builder. I said that years ago in woodworking before I really heavily got into my dioramas. I think building, you're going to get better as you build whatever you're building. I don't care if it's woodworking, dioramas, whatever, models, plastic, wood, doesn't matter. But if you don't make any mistakes and you do it, let's say you're very super cautious and you're one of those people that just plans everything out and everything falls into place, and you've been doing it for like 5 years, and then you finally come up with something that you're stymied and you're like, I don't know how to fix it because you haven't had practice fixing things. I'm not saying that's a real scenario, but I just think that the more you have to fix things, not necessarily looking to make mistakes, but the more you have to fix things, I really believe this is going to make you a better builder. It just increases the skill set. It increases your ability to do stuff. So don't be afraid of mistakes. Call them out, call yourself out, laugh at them, learn from it. Number one, but don't be afraid of making mistakes, because then you may not challenge yourself to go beyond your current ability. And that's, why would you do that? You always want to go beyond your current ability. So Fancy Potato says, you could maybe put another level in that big space. I know. Isn't that cool? I mean, so here's the thing. You think, and when I'm designing this, I get these questions a fair amount of times. What are you thinking about? Where's the inspiration? How do you do it? Well, I think the number one thing is the books I read, and, because it's from a book, or the images and stuff like that. But I think the number one thing is I get in there. I in my mind, I get in there. I imagine myself in the space. And so by imagining myself in the space, understanding what I'm doing in that space, and then I think, well, what would I need to do that? So if I'm in a kitchen space and I got to cook a meal, what do I have to cook a meal? If I'm in a wood shop space, if I'm in a whatever kind of space, what am I going to have in there to do those things? Well, that's just what I do. The same thing about design. If I come into here and we're using it as a hideaway, okay, let's just say that the ne'er-do-wells have taken over this attic space. Nobody knows they're up there. And they've created a meeting place, or maybe even a spying place, because down below is Barrett's Coffee House. And Barrett's Coffee House has some high-level clientele. So if I'm in there and I come back to this place again and again and again to do whatever activity I'm doing, remember, I need to have a purpose. There's something I'm doing in there. Well, then I can just build it out like I would be somebody in that place. If I'm in that place, I would lay boards down to make it easier to walk across the joists. That's why I left joists on the floor and didn't put any flooring in this. There's a ceiling on the bottom, but there's no flooring over the joists. And it probably needs some more joists. But to give the effect of, if you're in an attic, you're walking across the floor or the attic joists, right? So that's an important part. So if you're doing it a lot of times, you may bring up some other boards and build in there. Just like Fancy Potato says, maybe there's a need to build a little platform in there and make it look scrappy. Don't make it look like it's part of the design. I mean, you could, it could be like a part of the design, but typically an attic is not. It's just for storage, whatever. But you could build your own in there and think of it in that way. Think of it as if you're ever a kid that built a tree house. That was a big thing when we were kids, growing up in the 70s, building tree houses. Well, I think that taught us a lot of things about just doing stuff. What it taught me later on that I can look back on is how crappy we were at building things. But it gives a really good perspective about how to build something bad. Let's say you never built a tree house, never built a tree fort. Excuse me. And you go online and you say, I want to build a tree house. Well, you can go to like SketchUp and you can go here and you can go there and you get all these things of a tree house and you just build it. But our tree houses didn't look like a little house in a tree. Our tree houses looked like a board with a flat piece of plywood on it with holes in the plywood, right? And then another piece of plywood nailed to the tree. And that was it. It was 5 stories. This is no joke. We had a 5-story treehouse. It did not look pretty. It was the most shambly looking thing you ever saw in your life. But it was there's a bit of character to it. There's a neat thing about that. It looks like 10-year-olds built it. And I think that's super important. If your dad or your mom builds you, your parent builds you a treehouse, it's probably going to look pretty awesome. But I like the fact of a kid built treehouse. Looks terrible and it's awesome. So anyway, I don't know if that's important to anybody. I think that's neat, and trying to build that kind of thing into your diorama, into a scene that you're creating and stuff like that. I think they say build what you know and build as personal as you possibly can. I think that's important, because when it's that personal and you know it so much inside, it's a memory that you have. You can add details that other people will recognize, but they maybe wouldn't have thought about that if they didn't have that memory. They didn't have that personal connection. So even though I've never been in medieval Midkemia, where this thing is built, of course, or where it's set, I still can bring in little things, just like Fancy Potato said, things from my memory, things from my childhood, to personalize it, to make it really seem as realistic as possible. Trying to put those personal elements into your diorama, I think, really help storytelling, but also just giving people a sense of this is something I want to look at. If you can get a feeling of comfort to come out of your diorama, because a lot of people just build like room scenes. It's just like a room, right? It's like, this is my 80s room. I saw one of those in the last couple of weeks. It was pretty cool. Had all these posters from the 80s and stuff like that. It was just a neat room that you wanted to be hanging out in for a while. Well, it's the same thing with these dioramas. Though I'm building scenes, I want it to be neat enough in that little room that you want to hang out in there a little while. You want to just be there. That's what I watch movies for. I've said this before. When I watch a movie, it's because I want to be where that movie is. I watch Indiana Jones because it would be fun to be in 1939 South America. I just love how the movie starts. And so the same thing with my dioramas. I think about putting those personal things in there so that people can identify something that maybe was personal to them too. And it's not for everybody. Not everybody's going to connect with it, but it's those people that do connect with it. That's why you do it. And that makes it really, really fun. Okay, sorry. Neil says getting better at it hasn't been my experience recently. Well, there might be one of the things that I find, Neil, to get better at something is to do something else. Okay? And I've said this for years. I like doing a lot of different stuff. My mind is that way. It's just predetermined that I'm interested in lots and lots of things. I'm not a great concentrator. I'm not a great focuser. I'm not a great person that can go in and just put everything aside and sit down for 3 hours and do something. Doesn't happen. Rarely has that ever happened. There are times, but it doesn't happen a lot. So by doing something different, possibly related, but sometimes not even related, skill-wise, with your hands, whatever, tools, whatever, I think can bring other things into what you're doing, and you do get better at maybe something that you're stymied on. You're trying to get better at painting. Don't paint. Number one, don't paint. Don't just always go back to painting. Don't. It's just an idea for you, because this has happened to me. I will stop doing something. Not intentionally. It's just like I haven't done a long time. And I'll come back to it. 6 months later, I am markedly better at that thing 6 months later than 6 months ago when I stopped doing it, and haven't done it for 6 months. I have no scientific data to give you. There's no, this is hogwash as far as you're concerned, and snake oil. But I'm telling you, my experience is that I have stepped away from things and I come back to it. I don't think that that's unique to me. I think that sometimes, and I've said this, that we practice things, we work on things, our mind does things in our subconscious when we're not doing them, especially if it's a problem that we want to work on. That's where eureka moments come from. That's where I just had this amazing idea. Well, having an amazing idea out of the blue, I find much harder to believe than having an amazing idea that you thought of some time ago. And it's like, nah, I can't figure it out, but I'll just kind of keep thinking it. I'll do something else. And then you think of that amazing idea. I think there had to be some pre-knowledge that had to go into that. And then your mind worked on it for a while. And then boom, you get this amazing idea. Same thing happens with skills. For me, at least, I can step away from something and then come back to it later. I'm better. Fact. So maybe that's something, Neil. I don't know that it's grinding or if it's just a great comment, but if it's grinding on you and you're like, man, I can't get better at this, stop doing it for a little bit, do something else fun, and then come back to it. I like how strong that roof level is looking. So far, it's just been wood and glue. Yes. And that's a really good point, John. The original things, we talked about that, right? I don't have it here right with me, but the original ones used tenon, mortise and tenon joinery and a pin. Not just one pin, even. Sometimes it was multiple pins and all these different angles and all this kind of cool stuff. It looked like this, so that's why I did this with glue, because it's all just glue and it's super glue. It's not wood. Now, let me back that up. The structure, the framing, all of that kind of stuff, even this is all done with super glue. It's medium super glue, gap filling super glue. Now, the reason I did that was because I was able to get the look of the joint from a mortise and tenon joint without having to do a mortise and tenon with that kind of glue. And there's a whole process, and I showed you that before. This side, though, I did use wood glue. I used tight bond wood glue. And that's the wood glue I use when I'm doing my woodworking. So it's a standard kind of a glue. You can find it anywhere. Woodworking store. So that's what I used. Now, I had talked about doing pins, and I still may do that in some areas. And by pins, what I mean is a wood pin. So I drill a hole through a joint. It's a very simple process, and I can do multiples at a time. And with this kind of a joint, it's better to do it after the glue's dried, but you got to be really careful because you can pop the joint. But I would just glue through here, drill through here with a drill bit that is just slightly smaller than the peg that I'm using. That's just one of the things. You don't want too much because you can split your wood, but you want to have it just slightly smaller, and then you hammer it home. And what that does is it gives it a mechanical joint, not just this like epoxy chemical joint. Because super glue does soak into the wood. This wood at a certain level is porous enough to allow the wood to have a fairly strong grip. And it feels pretty strong. But it's not like a mechanical joint, so that if the glue fails, the mechanical joint will hold it together before you can put more glue on it. Because you would have to repair it. You couldn't just, if you had that mechanical joint in there, you wouldn't have to do it. American Genius is here. Hello. How's it going, Christian? Thanks very much for coming on. If you guys haven't seen Christian's channel, American Genius, you got to look at it. He's awesome. Love his painting. Brilliant stuff. He's been on the show before. You've seen him. John, so the super glue isn't wicking into the wood. It does, yeah, it does somewhat, but it's not like a PVA glue. PVA glues really do get into that wood, but there are also things you have to do to it. A PVA glue, when you're applying it to wood, especially oak like this I'm doing here, it needs to be clamped. It needs to be under pressure. I'm literally just laying the shingles on there. In these, there's really no pressure in these. They're cut to size, and there's no pressure. So I could have used it, but I think that the strength that I get from the CA glue on this wood and accelerator, whenever I use accelerator, I think it works good. And it serves the purpose. I'll put it that way. If it were a structural need, then I would have to do the drilling, and I might have done it a little bit different, but it's not structural in the purest sense of the word, where it's going to have to hold weight, it's going to have to take stresses and stuff like that. It's not. I end up ruining how the wood reacts to stain and wash when I use CA glue. Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I had to consider. Remember in the process, John, where we were doing this, I would gob that stuff on good because there was a lot, and then there would be like this over like seep out and stuff like that. But I had to file it away. So I did have to go back in and remove that stuff. So it will be seen if you don't do that. There are areas on here where you will see it. How I'm treating the outside, I haven't fully, done, but we did talk about the staining. I think it was last week. Yeah, I don't know if stains the way I'm going to go on this. Staining would be great, but staining gets into the wood. And what the CA glue does is it will impede, your stain from soaking into the wood. The stain can still affect the glue, but less. So it'll just look different. I can't tell you exactly how it'll look, but it'll look different. And any kind of finish will do that because you're impeding your stain from going in. A paint or a color is a surface treatment. While it's wet, certainly, if you've got a porous surface, it'll soak in. But paints aren't meant to really soak in. Paints are meant to adhere and work on the surface. So I think that's probably what I'm going to end up using on the wood is a paint, because there's so many different surfaces. There's so many stuff. I literally need to take this and probably take it outside and shoot it with the airbrush, and just everywhere, just fog the heck out of it and shoot it. And I believe I'll have a fair amount of hand painting, to finish off. Typically I wouldn't have to, right? But because you're going to be in and out of this thing, you're seeing inside and out, the whole thing has to be right. The inside can be lighter than the outside, all kinds of that stuff, but everything is going to be treated. So yeah, I think I'm probably going to use paint instead of a stain or an alcohol based, something that's going to get into the wood. But I did clean that glue. Christian, thanks, American Genius. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate your stuff, American Genius. It's just brilliant. Thanks, John. I appreciate it, sir. So, I've been talking about this live demo the whole bloody time, and here it is an hour in and we haven't done it. So I'm going to turn on my camera, and we are going to look at how I actually do some of this stuff, just like the video. So, I don't think I'm going to surprise anybody with what I'm doing, but I want you to be able to ask questions while I'm doing it, show you how to do it live and stuff like that. And we're going to go all the way through with, cutting this down with the top down. I've got the top down set up. So we're going to go through tapering these guys. And I've got some cuts, so we're not going to cut them on the table saw, but I will show you how to cut the individual on the little jig that I made. So let's do that. I am going to go to our top down, and that is our top down. So I've just got this board here to do this on. And of course, I don't have my right tape, but this will work fine. So I do want to get these kind of indexed to the edge, because the thing is, these are so thin that if it's like hanging over or something like that, it's not going to taper easy. These can bend a little bit. So I want to line them up to the edge on the front and the side to give it full support underneath it. You want it to be like a flat board. Then I'm just going to step these back. I got 5, just like in the video. These are the same ones that were in, well, not exactly the same, but the same kind of wood. And it's just so funky doing it this way. But there is 3/4. And I just move these up like that. And it's actually 8/10, but we're gonna fake it. There we go. So that's fine. I'm gonna clamp it. Now the clamping is just to keep them all straight. Clamp this back here. If you don't clamp it, you're gonna have a lot of problems. So a couple of clamps, and that's all it is. Now I'm taking my full size. Now the bottom of this, I've got it tuned, as I said. You can also put a little bit of wax on the bottom. You're not making a lot of contact with the wood here because, again, we're working to get rid of the peaks. I want a smooth transition from about 3/4 of an inch back here all the way down to the bottom of this. This bottom piece where I stop basically is when I start blowing through it. So you'll see that it does not take long. The other thing is, I mentioned this, I'm not going to do it flat here. I'm going to bring it down here, tip it down. Now it's at the proper angle to take these off. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to skew this off to the side, because when you skew the blade, you're doing a slicing motion. Here, it's kind of like taking a knife and trying to cut bread straight down. You know, you're just coming in straight down with the blade. What you want to do is you want to kind of come in at an angle like this, right? And that's what we're doing by skewing it. So I'm going to stand up here, make it easier. And then I'm just very easily going back and forth. I'm not picking it up. You don't have to, but I'm also not bearing down really hard. And I hope you can see the change in the shade or just the lighting to see the part that's getting cut off. And if you're worried about doing this with a hand tool not being faster than, you know, doing it with a power tool, the thing I would say to you is this. If you're using a power tool, the chance of going too far is much higher than using a hand tool. When you use power tools, they have so much power that it's really easy to blow past where you want to go here. So I haven't got all the way here, but you can see that's the process of getting that taper. So I'm just going to stop there because I don't want to do this all day. So when that's done, I just take these off of my little jig here. And then I cut 1 1/8 inches off at the table saw. You saw that in the video, so we're not going to do that. But I am going to show you how I use the jig and the large chisel to cut the individual ones. Now, when I first started doing this, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. When I first started doing this, I wasn't sure how wide I wanted them. And so I was thinking, you know, maybe because I wanted some variability. Is that a word? Variability? Variance? It's probably better. I wanted some variables between these. And so I thought, well, I can have 3 marks. Here's the thing I learned. Don't. Try to get them all the same, because when you're trying to line these guys up, and we're going to go back to our other camera. When you're trying to there we go, line these guys up and make sure that you're not having gaps and stuff between them. So you want them kind of doing like a brick. So I don't put them top on top. I put one halfway off the other, right? So that's what you're seeing here. So there's a bit of variation between the width of these, but it's not a heck of a lot. And so what I want to do is I just mark there, and I just come down here and cut and just slide it right back in and do the next one. Cut and slide it in. The variation comes with, I will do probably just like a 30-second, and a 30-second is like that. You know, it's half the width of a pencil lead. That's the only variation I'm doing. And that I can do because I can work that into that pattern and not blow by the spacing that I need so that I don't have gaps, from one shingle to the next. I'm also not worrying if it's completely straight. It works fine. Again, I want these to be like a split shingle. Somebody's sitting there with a fro, if you know what a fro is. A fro is how they use, they actually make shingles. And it's basically, it is a handle with a straight blade that comes out like that. And it's sharp on the bottom. It looks like an L. And you stick it on top of a log and you hit it with a mallet and you make shingles. That's how you make shingles, real shingles. And well, by hand, they have manufacturing now. But that's it. So, I mean, once I've got just a pile of these, then I start putting them in, and it's a pretty darn simple process. So, question is, do you put the taper up or down? I varied it. So, and what I mean is this. I don't know if the top down is going to be better view of this or not. This is probably going to be fine. So when I am doing this layer right here, sorry, this is like monkey business, isn't it? When I'm doing this layer right here, if you'll notice, the taper is on the outside, okay? Meaning that taper that I cut on my shingles before I cut them individually, there's that taper, okay? That I have facing up. When I'm doing a transition like that, I actually put the taper down on the individual shingle. Couldn't remember the darn word for the thing. That's when I would flip it over. I don't know that that's right. It looked right. I imagine there's a real shingle person out there that could answer that a lot better. But that's how I did it. There is a little difference in the way that they lie when you're lying them down on that roof. When I'm setting them in, I'm just running a bead of the PVA, the wood glue, and I'm just setting them in. There's no clamping. There's no nails. Scott, I know we were looking for nails. There will be nails, but not in the shingles because you want to cover the nails, unless I do some damage. But yeah, so put them in there, varied a little bit. I started out, as you can probably see, I think I got some pictures up here still. Wrong one. Let's do that. I still have some gaps and variability, but on the bottom course, you're going to notice that I we're going to get to the picture here. I kind of did have them straighter there. And then as I went further up, let's get a better picture. Well, you can kind of see it there. As I went up on this, I would drop some of them. I would make some high. The color was really important that I had that varied. I did not want a singular color. I didn't want, like, I went to the store and bought these. I definitely wanted that variable color, that blotchiness, that change. And the color is going to change. I'm not going to, though, try to make it all one color. I also want to show on here that when I start weathering it, some of these are going to be like brand new. I want it to look like it's been repaired. And they didn't, they didn't try to weather it after they repaired it. I mean, if they repaired it, you have some brand new shingles in there, and then they just put in. I want a little bit of that. I've seen that done, and it's just part of adding a little bit more character to it. I want to show age. I want to show that it's been around a little while. It's been kept up. It's been maintained, but I do want to show some of that weather. So anyway, that's my whole plan with shingles. That's it. That's what I got. I think it looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. And it's made me want to do a little bit more with it. I had somebody texted me earlier. It might have been Winston again. I had a lot of conversations with Winston this week. But one of the things I was thinking about is I really want to do a village. I think that a village would be a lot of fun. After doing this, the layout, seeing other people's stuff online that they've done and all that kind of stuff. There's something about a little medieval village. There's, the winding streets, all of it. There's such a attractiveness to it that I really want to do one of those now. So I'm thinking a much smaller scale, but that's in the future at some time. I have no idea when. I'm not talking about something I'm planning right now, but there is a definite want to do something smaller, maybe this big, physically bigger than this, but of a much smaller scale so that I could get a lot more into it. I really like that idea. So thank you very, very much, everybody, for coming on today. I really appreciate you being here. It was a lot of people. Holy franks. I couldn't believe it. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I do want to mention my patrons because I have some really, really great folks. And you've seen a lot of them here today. So I really appreciate it, folks. But I do want to mention my patrons because they're just the best folks. And there it is right there. These are my patrons. They help. They help with everything, getting this on air. I've also got YouTube members and even Mark Nelson. Now, he's not a YouTube member or a patron, but Mark gives me like tips and stuff, which is amazing. So thank you so much, everybody. This really helps in, putting together the show, keeping these kinds of things going. I have a want to build these things and to be able to share it and give you like the knowledge that I've gained over 30 plus years of doing it. And in other words, I'm getting joy out of that, but I'm also getting joy out of the fact that I can give something back because a lot of the ideas about diorama building came from me jumping into dioramas a number of years ago and getting online. And I feel that real need to say, well, yeah, thank you so much, but can I please give something that I know also? And that's what this is all about. The Patreon, the YouTube, the Instagram, all of it. It's about trying to give something back. So thank you. Thank you very much for helping me. And I hope I'm getting something back to you. So that's what I got this week, folks. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a wonderful weekend wherever you're at. John, I'm watching you, sir, because he's on vacation. He's having a fantastic time. So everybody, I hope it's nice where you are. I hope you have a great time this weekend. I hope you get a chance to get at the bench if